which is really nice to see that growth. So as Paolo mentioned, so I was the campaign manager in 2019 for 4 town board candidates who all ran as a slate in the town of Manlius. And this was pretty much unheard of. In 2017, we had 2 people run for 3 spots. One of them won, the other one did not. But we firmly believed if we put together a slate and we really put together a diverse slate in terms of strengths, weaknesses, different backgrounds, different just fields, that we could be stronger together. And that's exactly what we did. We actually had literature that was a 2 pie charts that one of our now town councilors, she's a graphic designer. So she came up with this great idea to show people quickly at the doors, this is what we're talking about, right? And basically what it showed people at the door was we have certain representation. We have more Republicans representing us than Democrats, but in actuality, the population of the town is much more close than we realized, right? So it wasn't a true representation, a true balance. And once we showed people that we just wanted to have more of a balance, people came out and voted for us. It was great. And I still remember when we knocked on people's doors back then and they said, Democrats, there's no Democrats here. Democrats had a slight enrollment advantage. Now there's a lot bigger of an advantage. So that was really great. We went from flipping the town board, like Paolo said, from 5 to 1, with Republicans having the advantage, to 1 to 5 with Democrats having the advantage. And something to kind of like pivot to. So recently in my time as chair, I realized that, we face difficulties within our own party as well. And Roger's from my neck of the woods, so he understands. It's hard to be, a young woman of color in a position of power, is what I'm realizing. And that has to do with something that somebody was mentioning earlier too. We talk about young people, bringing them in, but then sometimes when there are young people at the table, they're not necessarily appreciated or listened to. And so that's something that I've learned over the last few months, especially to work with. And one thing I did definitely want to touch upon as well was recently we had some local BLM rallies in our area. And through those BLM rallies, I've met wonderful people in our town. And we actually recruited about, I think, almost like 10 committee members onto our committee. From those rallies in particular. So that has been a great experience for us recruiting the committee. And I think that's something that you can build up your bench by having all these committee members who are ready to go. And once they get the experience of campaigns, I don't know how many people have said, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to a campaign. And I'm like, neither do I, right? Like I'm learning on the fly, I'm learning on the go. So let's just learn together and let's do it. And the same thing goes for running for office. I feel like you're never really prepared to do that. And then you can try, but you're just not prepared. And then you're there all of a sudden. So if anybody is thinking about running for office or even thinking about just getting more involved in local committees or wanting to help out on campaigns, I think one of the key reasons that I have been successful in a short amount of time where we are is because there were key people within the local committee that we had in Manlius that welcomed me with open arms and said, you know what, you want to go do something? Sure, go do it. Let's figure it out together. But yeah, so that was pretty much most of my experience. And now I've actually pivoted. I am a political consultant, and I also work for a state senator locally. So I am completely shifted now from what I once was doing, and I absolutely love it. So thank you so much for letting me talk, Paolo.
Thank you so much, Perna. And I think your story was like kind of like a really good, microcosm of like what happens when things go right. Right. And when we're allowed to take positions of power, and also, in a way, if we're not allowed to take positions of power, Perna, if you hadn't been a chair, that probably wouldn't have happened. Right. They wouldn't have flipped the seats from 5 to 1, because sometimes people don't think that we can do this, and we show them that we can. Right. And so on that theme, I wanted to introduce my good friend, my fellow Peruvian American, He's the first Democratic county legislator of his district and the first Peruvian American county legislator in upstate New York. My good friend, I guess I'll say this, I also call him the prettiest legislator in Dutchess County. And my good friend, Giancarlo Yaverius, if you're there.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Paulo, thank you so much for having me. First, I definitely just want to give a shout out to Paulo, my brother, for all the work that you do. Even back when we met, when you were chair of the Rural Caucus, you know, how people that you were pissing off for all the good reasons. And that is something that I love about you, my brother. So thank you. What's up, everybody? As Paulo said, my name is Giancarlo Laverius. I'm a Dutchess County legislator in New York, prettiest legislator in Dutchess County. I got involved in politics because I was pissed off. Oh, by the way, disclaimer, I cuss a lot. That's because I'm passionate and the Lord is working on me. Amen. Okay. So if you hear me cuss, it's because I got passion. I ran because I was pissed off. My area where I live is called Poughkeepsie, New York. We are about 5 miles long, and everybody knows each other, and we're plagued with a lot of violence. We're plagued with a lot of drugs. In the past 10 years, I've lost 45 of my friends to drugs and violence. And during that time, I was really mad about not having any answers to why I'm burying my friends, why my friends are going to jail. In my area, we do not have a youth center, so like a YMCA, we do not have that. We do not have a trade school, but my county is building a $200 million jail in the middle of the city in where I live. So they're certainly not going to put white people in that jail. They're certainly going to put those who look like me, who look like you, in that jail, and they have been doing that so far. So I ran simply because I didn't feel there was representation there. I wasn't a person that knew about politics. I wasn't politically sound. When I ran, I was the complete opposite. I was just a kid from the hood. I got to, play football for a good amount of time. I played in college and was able to but before that, when I got to the combine, I injured my knee. So the NFL dreams were over from that point on. But when I interned with a state senator by the name of Terry Gibson, I realized that people, it's not that they didn't care, is that they didn't know, because they didn't live where I lived. Their kids didn't school to where I went to, and nor did they experience what the Black and brown experience was. So therefore, when they created legislation that they thought was good intentioned, never reached the kids who look like me. And so I decided to run to be that person. When I first ran, the county and state party had some issues because I didn't necessarily look like a politician. As you can see, I have really long hair. I have a beard. I wear earrings. I got tattoos. I cuss a lot, right? I have a certain twang to my voice. And for many, that was not what a politician looked like. And so they wanted me to cut my hair. They wanted me to shave my beard. They wanted me to talk in a different twang. And I said, why would I change everything of where I'm from? If I'm going to be representing this certain area, this is what we look like. This is how we talk. This is how we do our swag. And you want me to lose my sauce? That's not going to happen. That is not going to how the authenticity is going to work. That is not how people trust you. So many of us that were in politics, we're tired of the polished politician. We don't want politicians. We want people in office. People in office. And I ran strictly on that, making sure that that there was awareness of a youth center, that we needed that, because that was a conversation that went to the wayside because our county legislature is Republican majority. So anytime there was a conversation about a youth center, it was never put on the agenda. So I made sure I made us think about that. Having a youth center, having a trade school, and making sure we had a bigger conversation of police relations when it comes to Black and brown people. So a civilian review board, body cameras, things of that nature started to become an object of conversation. And so I ran on that. I didn't cut my hair, obviously. I didn't shave my beard. I ran on my authenticity because I knew in order to win, I needed people's trust. I didn't need people's money. When I first ran, they told me that I needed to raise about $5,000 to $8,000. I won with $130. And that was because I spent money on palm cards. $130 went to palm cards. The rest was hustling, knocking on doors. When I was playing basketball with the youth, having conversations about them, about what I want to do for them and how I want to do it for them, and getting them involved in it so they become a part of the process. And then a few months later, come election of November 2016, I became the first person of color in my seat since the inception of my county legislature. And since then, I've been fucking shit up. And it's been wonderful. It's been beautiful. I shall continue to fuck shit up in all the great ways. And I hope that all of you who think about running, who want to run, fuck shit up. Like, do it all the way, set it on fire. You do not have to be, if you take anything from what I'm saying, you do not have to be some cat from Harvard. You do not have to be knowing Robert Rules of Order like the back of your hand. You have what we want, and what I want is to see more women of color run. I want to see the janitor run. I want to see the deli person run. I want to see the mailman run, the milkman, the paper boy. Those are the people that should be running, the people who truly have connections to the communities, not the guy who just pops up in a suit. I want the guy who's been here, the rascal, the old OG, that smacks you around when you're doing bad. That's the one who should be running. The old auntie that smacks you before your mother comes home because you did something wrong at church. That's the one that should be running. Those are the ones that we need in office, because those are the connections that really bring people to trust politics once again. And if we can do that, then we have changed the landscape of what a politician looks like. It's no longer people who look like they're on Capitol Hill. It's now the people who look like rural America, who look like the common folk, the layman, as we say, or the lay person. Those are the people who are the best people to run. The rest, you can learn that bullshit later. And honestly, it doesn't really matter. The rest you can learn later. But if you got love in your heart, you have that authenticity, people are going to see right past the bullshit, and they're going to see you for what you are. So if you're running, please run authentically. Please run as your best self. And fuck shit up, man. Start a fire. And worry about the water later. Start the fire. All right, so thank you guys so much for having me speak. I truly appreciate it. Paulo, thank you, my brother, for having me here. And I'm here, guys. I'm here. If you're ever in Poughkeepsie, New York, just ask for the prettiest legislator, and they'll point you to my way if you can't remember my name. And so we hook up that way. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you, and I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. I know we did an event in Texas last week, and I'm pretty sure that they, the people in Texas loved him so much they probably named a county after him.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think we're gonna forget him, but I know the chat's on fire. GC, it's great to hear you.
Wait, so are we cool with cursing? I know some folks aren't. Whatever. I really wanted this to be like a real live experience, right? And so I'm going to keep on going, right? I really want us to talk about like building movement, right? And connecting each other. And like, I think one of the most powerful things here is that there is Pennsylvania and upstate New York Democratic rural connections, right? Shout out to Judith Hunter, the chair of the Democratic Rural Conference, who's in here as well. And then Mr. Perfetti, who's a member of the board of the Democratic Rural Conference. Shout out to Roger from Syracuse and a bunch of other people. And shout out to all of you from the 13 rural northern PA counties. It's great to be able to connect together. And so I connect with the next speaker really well. The next speaker and I connected at Netroots Nation. And we spoke about, there was a panelist, and actually it was interesting, there was this panelist saying that rural communities were the enemy when it came to redistricting, that we couldn't do anything, right? That we couldn't win these areas, right? And Senator Ram is actually somebody who I met after I participated in a panel about rural organizing. And I think she really understood like a lot of the work that we're doing, right? And so she's agreed to do this event to kind of keynote our event, because I think she really believes in this notion of like bringing diversity to defeat inequality and defeat this notion of, hopelessness. And so Senator Kesha Ram is the first woman of color in the Vermont State Senate, and I'd love to introduce her so she could keynote our event. Senator, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Paolo, for that warm introduction. And I just want to let folks know it was the Netroots Nation in Philadelphia. I know for some of you that's very far away, but I do love your beautiful state. And I just love Paolo because he texted and he's like, we're running a few minutes late, and it's literally 3 minutes late. And that's why I love him. He brings so many great speakers to the table. I never feel like I deserve the title of keynote speaker in any way. And I'm sorry I couldn't listen to more speakers. It's sugaring season up here. And my fiance was out all day sugaring, and then we had to run a bunch of errands. So it just pushed things back, but they tapped all of their maple trees. So we're in good shape. But yeah, I was listening to Giancarlo, and it was just reminding me, and I saw someone say, I'm running for office for the first time, I need some advice. And I think that gets me to sort of, if I thought of a few pieces of advice I could give, the first one would be when you're deciding if it's right for you to run. I was thinking of the list that Giancarlo was giving, you know, the auntie, the old curmudgeon, the, you know, the young person who really wants to fuck shit up and change things. You know, I'm not a big cursor, but I'll give it to you, because there are days when I decide, do I want to burn this place down or get through the next day and try and make a difference? And my advice, oops, sorry, my phone's downstairs. My advice would be, and I think rural people know this really well, is to run where you want to be buried. Is to really not think about like, am I in the right positionality? Is this the right time, et cetera? You know, am I in the right place? You know, think about it as when people like pass by the place I was cremated or my tombstone, will they say, that person really loved this place, you know, and they gave everything they had to this community or this state. And I say that because I grew up in Los Angeles, and when I moved to Vermont for college, I was a very rare person. And, you know, I had the opportunity as a sophomore, because I was just so outspoken. It was like my high school was 5,000 kids. So here I was in Vermont, where, you know, I like to say there are more people on the freeway at night in Los Angeles than there are people in the state of Vermont. And I was able to just be really outspoken. And so our then Congressman Bernie Sanders was running for the US Senate for the first time. It was 2006. And he really wanted to have a big crowd come. And I know everybody thinks like Bernie can get a huge crowd now wherever he goes, but this was, you know, he had a cachet, but it was niche, you know, and so he didn't think he could do it alone. So he invited this rock star senator from Illinois to join him that day. And as the hype was building about this event and this new rock star senator from Illinois that was going to come to Vermont, they realized, you know, we don't have any women on stage for the event, and we should probably find one. And a friend of mine said, you know, Keisha's actually like very young woman of color, like, hey, bonus, you know, and she's not afraid to speak. So they, as a sophomore, invited me to join them on stage. And I knew that these were two great orators. That's all I really knew. So I was really trying to work on my speech. And I just talked about how young people need to get involved in politics, or things will be, you know, decided on our backs and for us, things like student debt and climate change. And gave my speech, welcomed people to the event. There was about 7,000 people there, which is more than 1% of the state of Vermont. And, you know, we went on with the event on down the line of speakers. And the last speaker was this rock star senator from Illinois. And he gets up and he starts talking about having the arc of the moral universe bend toward justice. And I'm thinking, I never hear senators speak this way, you know? And he starts saying, you know, and I have a father from Kenya and a mother from Kansas. And I thought, I have a father from India and a mother from Illinois. And I've never heard a story like this one. And then he says, you know, I have this funny name no one can pronounce. And I'm like, this guy is me. Like, who is this person? And then in the middle of all of that, he says, and you know what, Bernie, if you don't behave yourself, we're going to run Keisha for the Senate instead of you. And first of all, I was like, okay, this really cool guy knows my name. But it was also the first time that anyone encouraged me to run for office. And, you know, I thought that day, hey, if there's a place like this guy in politics, you know, then maybe there's a place for me. And 2 years later, we both ran for office. He became the 44th president of the United States, and I became the youngest legislator in the country at the time. So I tell you that because, you know, when I was knocking on doors in Vermont, I just thought, I think I want to live here. I don't feel like a Californian anymore. I wore like sandals and cable knit sweaters back home to LA, and people were like, who are you? You know, you're like a Vermonter now. And so when I was knocking on doors, people would say, okay, let me get this straight. So you are okay with winter. You moved here from Hollywood and you're surviving winter. and you've been here for 4 years, you want to stay, you don't want to go back to Los Angeles, and you want to be our legislator. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm offering here. And they'd say, you sound crazy enough to be a Vermonter. Totally, you got my vote. And so, just really putting myself out there and saying, like, I know that you don't like outsiders here. I know it's, I'm not a native Vermonter, and that can be a really big deal for some people, but I'm really committed to this place. I love it, and I want to stay, and I'm here. I'm not having an apartment somewhere and running for office somewhere else. And, people just said, yeah, that's what we want. I challenged incumbents that year, and I won by the largest margin of any challenger in the state. And so that was when I started my journey. I was 22 when I became a legislator. And, I know people are looking for advice on how to run for city council, how to run for office. When I was a legislator, I think I got some great advice that was similar to what I would do when I ran, which is to remember that a few things, one, when you're with your colleagues, just like when you're talking to your constituents, something gets them up every morning and something keeps them up at night. That's what drives them. It could be their kids, it could be, and having a dog park in town, or it could be, access to early childhood education or high taxes. I mean, whatever it is, you might not always agree with them, but you can figure out if you share a passion and there's something that you can sort of build with them. And that sort of brings me to a second story. When I was a new legislator, I was 23, I was working on tribal recognition. Vermont is home to the Abenaki people. Vermont and much of New England was Endakina, which it belonged to the Wabanaki Confederacy. Some of the Wabanaki Confederacy have First Nations recognition up in Canada, and of course they bumped up against the Iroquois Confederacy and the Mohegan, where you all are for the most part. So they took up a lot of New England, and they had never received state tribal recognition. So I was working on this bill, and it was really kind of revolutionizing what we meant by a process with genealogical records and tribal records, and then a governance system to be able to claim state tribal recognition. And there were people who were happy, there were people who were really upset. It was very controversial. And a lot of legislators said, she's young and she's new, like, what does she think she's doing? And I had pulled some of the best pieces from other states. And one day I was in our legislative lounge, like legislators only, which at first when I was 22, they wouldn't let me in because they didn't think I was a legislator. And, I was in there, and I thought I was by myself. And there was this other older senator. He was from the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. We have a kingdom. It's a very rural part of our state, and people, are more conservative up there for sure. They just want to be left alone. And Duncan Kilmartin came over to me, and he could talk about the blood of Christ, like almost any bill. We could be talking about environmental permitting, and he was talking about the blood of Christ. So he comes over to me, he says, I read your bill, because we had just released like a rough draft. And I said, okay. And he said, it's a really good bill. And I'm thinking, like, I'm gonna get punked. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And he looks around and he doesn't see anybody else. And he says, I hope this doesn't offend you, but you go, girl. And I was like, what just happened? Okay, so that was something. And, I just remember thinking at the time, like, I still don't think he supports this bill. I still think this is some kind of practical joke. So we get to the floor, and I hear, everyone thinks your bill's really controversial. You're 23, like, what are you even doing? And he gets up and he says, I know people wouldn't expect this from me, but my hat's off to the member from Burlington. This is one of the best pieces of legislation I've ever seen written. And I picked up like 40 votes right away, and it passed 132-5 in the House and unanimously in the Senate, and was signed by the governor. And, I never forgot that lesson, that you can go knock on the door of somebody or talk to somebody who you really disagree with, and you can still find common ground, or they can still perhaps find something to admire, your work ethic, how that they saw you late at night working on a bill, that you may not know that their neighbor is Algonquin, and, they actually really value that neighbor and think, this bill is something of value. So that's what happened in my case. And, I just share that because it reminds me that another legislator said to me, when I was so young, right? And he had started when he was 19 in the legislature, and he had served 38 years by the time I met him. So I was like, give another young person like some some advice. And he said, well, if you act like the youngest legislator and you set yourself apart as the youngest legislator and you call yourself the youngest legislator, people are going to treat you like the youngest legislator. And guess what? You don't want that. You want them to treat you like a colleague. And the second you seem like the young one, well, what does that make them? And nobody wants to feel that way. So you have to find common ground with people. And that's exactly what I did. It served me really well. And so the last sort of piece I'll say is, you know, sometimes we get courage from those who have come before us and in whose footsteps we feel like we're following. You know, for me, it's people like Governor Madeline Kunin, our only female governor that we've ever had. You know, it's people like Barack Obama who encouraged me to run. But I also now am starting to take a lot of inspiration from people younger than me. And, you know, when I was in the House, I introduced legislation for independent investigation into police use of force, for changing Christopher Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. I introduced all kinds of legislation. And people would say the Knights of Columbus are coming after you, you know, the police union is coming after you, like you're just causing trouble everywhere you go. And I kind of let it silence me. I would put those bills out there. I'd feel really proud of them. But I would not necessarily hold firm to that line in the sand. I would sort of back off the issue and say, okay, just leave it on the wall. You know, I know it's really radical, so I'll just move along. And I left the legislature for 4 years. I went and got my master's degree, ran again for the Senate, and now have this, you know, historic election in the Senate. And in the last 4 years, things have changed a lot. They passed Indigenous Peoples Day. They're talking a lot about police oversight and reform. And I've come back to a legislature that's saying they care about racial justice. Saying when they used to call my legislation a solution in search of a problem. We're a white state. We don't have that problem here. And now I don't have to be the first one to say, you know, racial justice is a priority issue in a white state. In fact, we are so white because we have a lot of racist tendencies and push a lot of people away with our nativism. And so, you know, I have just been able to come back and say, I am introducing the same legislation I did years before, but I feel much more supported and I have much more backup. And in fact, I'm looking at the squad and AOC and younger women and saying, what am I so afraid of? Why am I so afraid to have my opinions and use my voice? And because all I'm doing is trying to speak for other people who aren't heard in these halls of power. So if I'm only here for myself, I'm just going to sort of back off and say, I'm trying to play the game and, you know, do something long term. But if I'm here for people, they have urgent needs and I need to express those in order for us to make a difference. So, you know, I would just say, be courageous, really listen to people. You can be courageous and people might still respect you, even if they really disagree with you. And, you know, really think about the place that you are and how much it means to you. You know, I have to say, I remember the first time I met someone who said, you know, I'm just gonna, and because I feel like this happens more often in Pennsylvania, it's just alluring. You know, they would say, I'm gonna keep an apartment in Philadelphia and like run in Allentown. You know, I'm just gonna kind of like do both. And that's such a disservice. That's why we have the Congress that we have. It's a lot of people who just don't care about their communities, don't care about rural America, you know, don't really care to be present with the people that they're serving. And so that's why I love Outrun and Paolo's effort and everything you all are trying to do, because you should really love a place enough to like have people yell at you, like give you a hard time and still want to be there, because, you know, they might give you a hard time, but if you get sick, they're going to put chicken soup on your door, you know, and they're going to pull you out of a ditch if you're in a car accident. And those are the kind of communities I want to live in. And that's why I'm in Vermont. And that's why I think a lot of you are in rural Pennsylvania. And so, you know, I'm always here as a resource to help you. It can be hard to have a progressive or liberal or, you know, however you want to qualify your voice and run in Pennsylvania. I'm friends with Nina Ahmad. I helped Katie McGinty in 2016. It's tough. There's a lot of loss, you know, for the wins, and your state Senate right now is kind of losing it, you know? So I have been following what's going on there and, you know, just wish you all the best. It can be really hard. It takes a lot of courage, but now, you know, through this network and through probably a lot of other efforts, you have each other and you have people like me to support you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ram. I'm really glad that you were willing to come and speak here, and hopefully we can get you future events, because this is the second event that we've done. Actually, somebody told me that it was like cool that like we did it. We launched this 2 months ago, and now we're like a national organization because we've done this in Texas and now Pennsylvania, and then I think maybe, God willing, in a few weeks, Arkansas and then Alabama, so yeah.
You're amazing, Paolo. I'm like, okay. Yep, I got. You said Ohio before, but wherever.
Well, yeah, it's but it's also the same thing that we are. We also want to invest in different states, and so we're also doing this again in upstate New York, and we're just making sure that we can kind of keep it local, but also keep it global, right? Mm-hmm. Because we want to build a network of local Democratic elected officials that actually work really well to make sure that we can mobilize people, right? And that happened in New York State, right? And it worked really well. And I don't know if I know Mr. Tim Perfetti and Judith Hunter are here. I don't know if you guys would be interested in speaking about the Democratic Rural Conference and why, rural Democrats in other states should be interested in forming one. If you could give us a few words. I think you're muted.
Well, my understanding is that Pennsylvania does have somewhat of an organization. There was an attempt for us to partner a little bit in the run-up to the election, since Pennsylvania was a swing state and we weren't. It's a very odd place we find ourselves in, because so much of rural New York is at best purple, often deep red. And we are so small a proportion of the state. I like to tell people that the DRC is 75% of the counties in New York. It's 85% of the landmass, but we're about 15% of the voters. And that's tricky. So each of our counties, there are 47 counties that qualify as rural in New York. Each of our counties on its own has a pretty small voice. So we have found that by joining together and speaking as one group on issues that we have in common as rural counties has been really important. But we're not able to get together right now in times of COVID. It's a tricky time for everybody, but we're trying to use this time to get stronger as an organization and to strengthen what we can do for our member counties so that they can be more successful in electing Democrats, because the Republicans are not offering any solutions for our voters. So we continue to chip away. We're trying to get stronger, and we definitely believe in a united voice helping us all.
Thank you, Judith. Those powerful words. And yeah, I mean, I got, one of my starts was I would go to the DRC every year. And I would just, I brought my friends from New York there and stuff, and they kind of got exposed to, what it was like to be a Democrat in upstate New York, to like deal with like rural elections and stuff. And it worked really well. And so, if there is an organization in Pennsylvania, we think that this is the time right now, specifically in this year, to start talking about building a more concrete plan of action nationally and within different states. We want our rural Democrats to be able to build like demands, right? Not demands from the party, but, asks that are actually concrete, right? Like, we talked to somebody in Texas last week, who was on the executive committee of the Texas Democratic Party, represented the Texas Panhandle, was always told that because all races in Texas were nonpartisan, that the party could not invest there, which is an excuse, right? It's an excuse to not create an investment strategy for those communities, right? And if we look at the what happened today with the Texas report, they had more people branding in their branding department than talking to the 1 in 3 Hispanic voters who spoke Spanish in that state, right? Who were primarily in rural communities in Rio Grande Valley, right? And so these are the dynamics that are happening now with the Democratic Party that I believe we can all stand up and say, no, this is what we actually need to do for our communities, and this is how we need to make it happen. Right. And so that's like one of the big things, that's why we had a party leader here and we invite party leaders to come and speak. There's an interesting conversation here about what is a rural county in New York, and in Pennsylvania. So that's why we founded Outrun, to make sure that we can have these conversations and, we can all exchange information. And so the next part of the presentation, and also, does anybody here want to take a break for like a minute or two? How do we feel? Anyone? Are we good to go? Okay, great. So the next part of the presentation is something that we call a what, where, why, and how template, right? And our template is to share resources that we've, kind of like amassed with our partners through whether it's Working Families Party or Wellstone Action and different organizations to show them that it's not as difficult to run for local office, right? So Jordy, can I present screen?
You should be able to.
Hold on. Yeah, I don't know why this is being weird. All right. Hold on. Would I have percent application? Okay. All right. So this is northeastern Texas. This is northern PA. I don't know why. Zoom.
Paolo, there's a little bit like at least for me, like your internet connection may have some bottlenecks that may be causing some stuttering if the screen sharing isn't what you want.
Is it not showing?
Or we see plan to take over northern PA.
Okay, hold on.
If you want,
it's not showing up. I'm sorry, this is new computer folks. Oh, do you mind sharing it, Jordy?
If you share it, yeah, if you want to share it with me, then I can share screen if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're shared on it already.
Oh, I am. You're right. Give me a sec.
Yeah.
Give me a sec.
Stop. I'm sorry, folks. Sometimes we have these technical issues. I may be young, but I'm not great with computers. Okay.
Is this what you wanted?
Yes. Can you make it bigger? It's relatively small now. That's perfect. Great. So this is our where, why, and how on how to do candidate recruitment and how to use diversity for candidate recruitment across wherever, right? This is a template that, we fit into the conversation about Northern PA, right? And so we talk about different things that are happening across the country that are themes of what's happening with democratic rural organizing and how we can make that work towards making sure that our communities are represented, right? And that we don't have unopposed elections. I don't know why Zoom is doing that. So yeah, this is really a conversation, by the way, when we open into the Q&A. It's a safe space. If you have any questions, if you have any anything that you would like to speak about, if you are interested in, maybe you have a question that you might think might not be, socially acceptable, but, if you want to ask, that's fine. Right. This is a safe space for us to be able to kind of change the conversation and to talk about transcending racism and dismantling it and also making sure that we can also recruit candidates while doing it at the same time. Right. So where? Northern Pennsylvania is a prime location for municipal election success for the Democratic Party. By strategically investing in town council races, that says Northeastern Texas, it's supposed to be Northern PA. We stand to generate a good bench as well as creating a good recognition in Northern PA statewide as a region to invest for the party. Right, we have to be strategic in our investment to ensure we can create victories that are convincing to both parties. Right, because we're not just here to talk about, we have to convince the Republicans that we can beat them. We have to convince the Democrats that we can also win in these communities and that we can win with diverse candidates that are actually winning the elections, right? For too long, the lack of investment has created a situation where we underperform and create a blockade for ourselves in our organizing, right? And there's already election success in Northern PA, right? And we can talk about Williamsport with my good friend Star Pool being elected to the...
Can I make it so everybody on the call can see it?
Yes.
You keep talking.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to have the what's it called? All right. So yeah. All right. Cool. So the link is there. Thank you, Jordy. And so there is a space there to talk about these conversations, right? And how do we overcome barriers in candidate recruitment, right? And that's the why, right? As it stands, the rest of the country and the rest of rural America, it in face value, it may not look like northern Pennsylvania has moved to the left, but it has, right? The 12 counties of northern PA represent an investment opportunity. They're not communities to be left behind. And every single county and every single town in every single county, whether it's Chemung County here in upstate New York or Union County in northern PA, we deserve democracy. We're one of the last few places across the country where an election can actually be contested and it's not decided right away if we find candidates. That's the big thing, right? We deserve democracy and no one is going to bring this but ourselves. A lot of people want to tell you, and this is a real frank thing, they will tell you, no, we have to blame the National Democratic Party or the State Democratic Party. These structures are built to make sure that power is preserved in a way that can maybe make the state competitive, but really leaves communities behind, right? And we cannot wait for the larger overall structure to react. We need to take up space, and we need to be able to take up that space in a way that's useful, right? So running for local office, making sure that our county chairs and our local Democratic committee members actually have a constructive ask instead of just blaming the national. That space to have a place in that conversation, because we do have a brand and we do have a notion of what we need to do to win in our communities, but we need to tell it, right? And Outrun was founded on this principle that the only people that we can wait for is ourselves, right? And that rural Democrats and progressives, and this is actually where the name came from, we have to outrun the top of the ticket to achieve victory in our rural communities. And we've been doing that for decades. And folks in northern PA know this, and you've been doing this for a while. And we need to be able to innovate ourselves into more victory, because I will tell you something, 10, 12 years ago, places like Georgia and Arizona were seen like Republican strongholds, right? Democratic districts that did not have, strong Democratic parties or strong progressive organizations, we would never challenge them. We need to be able to follow the lead of leaders like Stacey Abrams and Giancarlo Yabarius and Eric Ball and Perna Deer and Senator Ram and all the folks that are in this conversation to take up space, right? We have to outrun the status quo, which is our motto, right? So how? Right? I think everyone here is already, Jordy, do you mind scrolling down a little?
I am yours to command.
Thank you. And if I'm talking too much, just let me know.
I'm surprised people
Oh.
haven't interrupted with questions, because I know a lot of this audience and they were really going to want to dig into this. So just be aware.
We'll have a Q&A session afterwards. If you could scroll up to the how, please.
I have to move the chat because I don't quite know where I am in the document. Oh, the how. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so you're in the who. We need to go to the how. Great. So we can talk about using a technologically advanced approach of combining optimized canvassing lists from Van as well as doing voter registration. We can project a good strategy to win these elections, right? And we're already working to developing the win numbers for each of these towns. If folks are interested in actually running for office and using that to calculate how many volunteers and canvassing phone banking shifts we will have to do to run a combined persuasion and base get out the vote campaign. And at the bottom of this document, there are resources like Run for Something, Arena, and Working Families Party. In New York State, you can gain an access to additional ballot line. That's not very true in PA, but it works to be able to use these resources. Like, whenever somebody tells you you're not experienced to run for office, I want you to tell them this. Whenever it's somebody in a position of a power dynamic, whenever somebody tells you that you can't do this, that you can't do that, ask them what a win number is, right? I will guarantee you that they will not understand that question because they've always been doing it the same, right? And so we're in the status quo that we're in a lot of these places because of that. But a win number is the number of voters that you have to bring out to make sure that you win your election, right? And we have resources at the bottom that teach that thing. And that sort of optimized campaign strategy, that's what wins elections. And in places where, I'll give you an example, right? My good friend Tyler ran in Horseheads, New York. He outran Hillary Clinton by 300 votes and lost the town council race by 50 votes in a heavily Republican town just because he had a better, palm card strategy, a better, get out the vote strategy, and his opponents were, I think, both 80. Opportunity for here to be able to talk about lazy incumbents, right? And let's talk about that for a second, because what is a lazy incumbent? Some of these Republican elected officials are so sure of themselves that they don't think that a young person can actually, run for office, right? Or that they don't think that a Democrat can beat them, right? And we prove it. Every person here in this call has proven that rural communities are something that they own, right? I remember I used to see the Republican mayor of Corning, New York, walk around thinking that he was like a lord or something, and then we flipped it the year after, and we flipped that city. Right, so connecting candidates to resources is key, and that's at the bottom, right? And so the next section that we really want to talk about here, rural communities, we're told, no, we can't run here. It's too much resources. We can't make, the numbers work, right? And sometimes we're told that by ourselves, right? And we're told within our own structures that we cannot do this, that people are helpless, that we cannot win in these elections. And I will tell you this, every single town councilman, every single county legislator, county commissioner, every single local elected official in northern Pennsylvania who gets elected, because I've seen this happen in upstate New York. Like Eric, for example, is being considered to run for state senate, right? Why? Because he's a Democrat elected in upstate New York, and they have a Republican incumbent in a district that's swingish, right? Every single person here who gets elected to office has a better chance of getting elected to the state legislature or Congress than your average person in Philadelphia or your average political operative in Philadelphia or New York City. There is no waiting line in our communities. We actually have to do the work. And in order to make that work happen, we need to talk about who has to run for office. And I want to talk about experience, right? We have to have an open mind about recruiting candidates who have, they might not have the experience of running for local office. They might not be a lawyer or something, but they have life experience and they've overcome adversity, right? And overcoming adversity, when you can communicate that to someone, when people recognize that in our communities, that's when we win, right? We can learn and build a genuine brand that we have so that we can have a real conversation around the notion of who runs for office, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. The Republicans already do this, right? If the Republicans are going to send coaches who didn't finish college to represent Alabama in the U.S. Senate, then we should expand our universe of who can and should run for office, right? And ideologically speaking, we do not need to have this like binary fight that people in Queens or Brooklyn can have, right? About the moderate versus progressive. We know that policies such as single-payer healthcare, making sure that we stand up against, stand up for fair trade, making sure that we can recognize people's rights, that these policies can be popular if we actually communicate them as such, right? That binary exists in a world of mostly white Democratic donors. And that's the truth. That is a world that is not inclusive of rural communities, because progressive policies do work and progressive policies do win, right? It doesn't always have to be moderate versus progressive. And if we communicate well, we can do that, right? Do you mind scrolling down?
Is this down?
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. Right. Right, so we can build an electoral coalition in upstate and rural counties in Pennsylvania and upstate New York and central Alabama and anywhere, right? We need to take up space, right? We have to build a coalition with folks who come from these communities, and we let them run as who they are and without prejudice, right? So my main ask here is not to think experience is something you learn on spreadsheets, but something you learn through handshakes. So when we think of candidates, we need to put into perspective that we should be asking folks to run for office, not just folks involved in the committee, folks who are involved in the community, folks who are never asked to run for office, right? A barber can have a better shot at running and winning a town council seat than a lawyer. A grocery store clerk understands numbers better than someone who signs corporate expense accounts. We have to reclaim the values of being a working class party by nominating working class people who also most of the time tend to be brown, black, LGBTQ plus women. And we have to celebrate that. And we need to make sure that we are giving folks of we are giving these folks positions of power within the party, or that we take them. Because if not, we will continue a status quo where, politics are changing. Places in rural Pennsylvania are changing. Places in upstate New York are changing. And there are people unwilling to recognize to keep a status quo that keeps Republicans in power. And guess what happens? We get people who get elected to office, and then, and they climb up the ranks. They come from state legislatures, and they become senators. And sometimes they vote against indicting a president for insurrection, right? Building this bench is more important than anything, and this bench should be black, brown, LGBTQ+, whomever. We need to recognize that overcoming adversity is something that, is something that we need to value, right? And it may not seem like Republicans are doing that, but they do, right? In my home state of New York, the first black county executive was Republican Chris Moss in my home county of Chemung County. In Hammondsport, New York, which is like a huge population of winery owners and stuff. And, there's a lot of liberal winery owners that give money to like different congressional candidates and stuff, but they can't find a Democrat to run for mayor in that town. And so the mayor of that town is a Republican janitor, right? We have to stop letting people use experience as a signifier to stop people from running for office. We need to overcome these barriers. So my main ask for you is that we all become outrun, that you also all outrunners, and that we can actually move forward to, win elections. And so that's it. We are the Outrun Coalition. Thank you.
Great.
Great. So I guess we'll open it up to Q&A.
I'm going to stop sharing, okay?
Yeah.
Hello, can I just say thank you? This is the fourth time, I think, that I've heard you guys' presentation, which is awesome. Each time it gets better. I wanted to ask, are there any candidates on this call that have specific questions? Larry. But I don't know everyone on the call, so I wanted to give candidates an opportunity to jump in before we do. That's okay.
Ty is a candidate also, I know.
Cool. Ty and Larry, you get to go first.
What was the question?
What's your question?
What questions do you want to ask?
How do I get my platform to where I am not trying to be aggressive to my constituents by saying, I'm trying to do a project. I'm not trying to trying to take over City Hall. And me being here in the Williamsport area, I know the stigma that I have, because a lot of people like me once they get to know me. It's what you see is not always what you're going to get. And trying to get funding and getting a committee, a lot of people sit there and tell me, you need a committee.
Yeah.
Well, and go like, well, I never had a committee. All my friends are they're my friends, but they're Republicans. And they say, I support you, but we're not going to give you any money because we really don't trust you. I mean, I'm pretty much, you know what I mean? And this is what I get. I mean, we really like you. You're a really nice guy, but we're going to give our money to this Caucasian kid over here, and this is what I get, and this is my problem. And I don't know how to combat that. And instead of I always in my life here have to be given somebody has to voice me, no matter no matter who it is. Oh, Larry's a good guy. He's all right, no matter where I go, from Jersey Shore to Montgomery, and cause I do a lot of karaoke, and I do it in strange places like redneck towns and stuff,
Love
and
karaoke.
the first thing I notice is when I walk in there, the whole room stops spinning. But all I have to do is get from the table to the mic, and the rest of the night is, hey, Larry, you're like awesome. You're great. Have a drink. Oh, Larry, come back again. I'm the only African American in the whole place.
Yeah.
And this is how I get.
Mr.
Yeah.
Manson.
Larry,
Yes.
I've asked you to call me tomorrow, please, and I'll walk you through a bunch of stuff and
Okay.
help you try and formulate. You need to. There's some basic things. There's some fundamental things that you need to put in place. And I know Linda Sosniak has been giving you advice, and I will give you advice. But you also have to understand that there is a point where you have to do some of this stuff on your own.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I
So
think
Mr.
Paula had some advice for you too.
Yes,
Mr.
Amanda, she just went through it.
Mr. Manson, if I could just make a point here.
Sure.
Because I also have a story about being the only person of color in a predominantly white space, right? I live and work in New York, and I work for the mayor here, but I also did a lot of fundraising and a lot of candidate building and a lot of doing a lot of work to make sure that our candidates were like helped, right? And so I know what it's like to be like the only person of color in a community where you have to jump in. You'd be surprised at like how white some of these donor circles are in New York City, right? And the best thing that I could tell you, and I've been called aggressive a lot by a lot of people too, and I think Giancarlo and Nick can back me up on that, and that sometimes that's bullshit. And don't let people try to tell you to not be who you are and run as a genuine candidate, because the best way for you to win is to run as a genuine candidate. And look, people will tell you what is wrong with your campaign before they try to do anything positive. And sometimes it's better to be able to make sure that you follow the advice of folks who are on your side, your kitchen cabinet, to move forward. But also realize that you have to take up space and say to people, this is who I am. I'm willing to fight for my community, and I want to make this happen in this particular way. I love karaoke too. That's how I meet people, right? And so do not, people are going to tell you you have to brand yourself a certain way. People will tell you, you're the only person of color in this room. You are a person who's done this, who is running for office and stuff. Don't let people try to tell you to brand yourself in a way that isn't who you are.
Right. Absolutely.
And so that's my biggest piece to you. Do not let people try to tell you who you aren't. Because if you run as like a candidate, just like, I'm running for city council and I want to do this, people know how to smell through crap, right? and so, yeah, that's my biggest piece of advice.
Right. And that's my issue. I mean, because I like people. I want to run my campaign because I want to do something for the people.
Yeah.
And I do know that living in Williamsport, they do have a racial, stigma, about African Americans. The majority of a lot of them are in jail. And when they look at me, they're like, have you been in jail? I go, well, I kind of sort of did a protest march against it. But I mean, but I have 4 judges that is behind me. But they don't want to come out publicly. They kind of privately say, you've been really good doing this type of job. You continue doing it. But it's so like, well, give it a shot.
Hey, Larry, if I can
Yes.
speak to your fundraising, it's when you talk about money, right? Especially in our communities, especially in my community, the Black and Brown community, where
Absolutely.
we don't make a lot of money, right?
Right.
$5 is a stretch. It goes a long way.
It goes a long way.
You have to formulate your ask differently. So when I ask my constituents for donations, I say, hey, man, this is where your $5 is going to go, right? And I break it down like $1 is going to go to supporting a youth program. Your second dollar is going to go to an elderly person who can't feed him or herself, or we're going to help them shovel their driveway. Your third dollar is going to go here. So if you formulate to them where the $5 is going and say, I'm giving it to a person, I'm giving it to a mission. Now your ask becomes completely different, and more people start to give, even though they're giving to your campaign, right? It's more towards giving it to what the mission is. When I first ran, I spent money out of my own pocket, so I didn't have any.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I'm doing.
When you're first running, you may have to run into that because people may not necessarily know you on that level yet. but at the same time, use the experience that you have in your neighborhood to create a narrative, right? So, for example, I was somebody who was, I went to jail. I was a person who was a gangbanger, right? So I've been through that street life, and I use the narrative to look where I've been and look where I'm going, right? You create a redemption story. So now people are going to say, damn, look what GC used to do, and now look where he is going. The same thing could be applied to you. Damn, I knew Larry back in the day when he was at the discos doing his things.
Absolutely.
And now he's trying to change his community. That is something I can get by. People,
yep, absolutely.
Because the thing with Black and brown people, we cannot be what we don't see, right? So if Black and brown people are just seeing you as a person of color just running for office, we don't see the reflection, right?
Absolutely.
So use who you are, whatever your experience is, to relate. And don't be afraid about what the other side is doing, because they're going to do what they're going to do.
Right.
As long as you stick to, like Paolo said, your authenticity, you're going to, and believe me, I'm a person who was exposed for his past.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Right.
and since my question is, I was born and raised in Chicago, where, and Barack Obama came to my old neighborhood where I was born and raised at, and my nephew lives across the street from Barack Obama's, area. So when I came to Pennsylvania from the military, I came here on the stigma that people from Philly and Jersey were here on drug rehab. I've never done drugs, and I don't even drink, but I got through right in the stigma. And that's the reason why when they look at me, they think automatically, oh, he's here on rehab, he's here on drugs, he's been in jail, and why should I trust this guy trying to better our community when the community itself was pushing the narrative of they didn't want African Americans here in Williamsport at all.
Hey, Larry, I can tell that you're going to be a really good campaigner because you're really good at talking. And I say that with a lot of love. But I want to just make sure we leave some space. Like, Ty, did you want to ask a question?
First and foremost, thank you for having me. Honestly, right now, I don't really have a question. But from being on a political side, I can tell you right now, it's a double-edged sword because I am the only person of color running for school board director, and I'm the first African-American man to possibly, as some are saying, win. And already it's early in the game and people are against it. And what's the double-edged sword is I'm also the president of the newly formed NAACP. We just became chartered. So I'm in a community where there are some that really don't want that to begin with. And on top of that, you're running for school board, and we had just had our SFT union president make some comments, and I'm not going to justify him. She made comments, and where she was trying to make a point, she really didn't make the point the way she wanted to. It came off abrasive and racist. That wasn't her intent. I actually saw the exact passage she had read, and she was trying to regurgitate, but she was so emotionally caught up in the moment, she just honed in and just lost it. And because I didn't speak out, it was funny. Some of the actual board members and their children, adult children, were sending me messages saying, how are you not speaking out? And I was trying to tell them, as a candidate and as a person who has been endorsed by that union and as a president of the NAACP, I have to walk a very fine line. So first and foremost, you're not going to get me with a gotcha. So currently that's just, I'm learning to navigate through that. And as you said, as I've heard everyone say, I'm being myself. I tell people I'm not a politician. I'm not politically correct. I am going to be me, speak and say what I want to say. And if it's something you don't like, then I'm sorry. But I'm retired, military. I don't need a feather in my cap. I'm doing this because I want to improve my community. And that is the message. And that's the message I'm going to continue to say forward. And one of the things I want to do and tell people I'm bringing here is transparency. I'm not looking to do this to catapult me to the next job. I'm doing this because my entire adult life has been serving people, not just in the military, but even in my off time with giving back to kids. So I thank you for allowing me to be here and hear wonderful speakers speak, and I'm gaining so much knowledge, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, Ty,
Harry
it's
and Ty.
oh, sorry.
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry,
Andy.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You're going to gain control of your own narrative, and I'm the guy that I'm a broken record on going to the doors. You're going to develop that unique relationship, one door to the next. You're going to ask people, what do you think? What are the problems in our community? What do you want to see for the future of the community? I think John Carlo mentioned it earlier. He spent $130 on his campaign because he hit the doors. Those conversations and the number of doors you're going to get to and the fervency of your journey is going to trump the other side. Somebody also said about the lazy politicians that never get to the door. I can guarantee you can continue to count on those lazy politicians or lazy incumbents will continue to be lazy. You're going to outwork them by just going to the door, being yourself. You're going to have wonderful conversations. You're going to have doors closed. You're going to have people not wanting to have conversations. But I guarantee the wonderful conversations and those wonderful connections you make at the door will propel you. I know myself when I ran, and I only ran once, I probably hit every door in my district. Those great conversations, and I'm sure some of the other folks here that ran can echo this, propel you. They give you a lift. It continues you forward. So don't get too concerned about having it complete. As Ty just talked, that message you just presented to us is going to be that genuine message you're going to take to the door, and I guarantee it's going to resonate. It may not resonate with every door or every conversation, but it's going to resonate with more people than you really think. And don't let anything about, well, I'm not sure how to shape, or the other side's talking this way, or there's a narrative going on in the community against me. Forget all that. Just it's meaningless. Just get to the door, be yourself, ask people. I guarantee there's going to be people that are going to say, nobody's ever knocked on my door. Nobody's ever asked me what I think. And that's a vote. I guarantee that's a vote in and of itself. So just continue, just propel yourself.
But if you do go to the doors, make sure you have a COVID protocol.
Yeah.
Just want to say that because it's always a bit trickier now.
Eric, who was door knocking, it's really easy if you knock quickly and then get off the porch.
I also canvassed in October, so I know it can be done. I just felt
knock and get off the porch.
It's important. Yes, it's important to lean into that. Eric, you had a hand up, and then maybe Ty has a hand up again.
Yeah. So just what Andy was saying there. He couldn't be more accurate with that. With my experience going door to door in terms of representing a local political entity, a lot of the people that I came in contact with probably never saw people really put that neighborhood effort in. And the conversations that I have with people, they are, as Andy said, just to hear, you're there to hear what they have to say. And it could be anything on their mind, any issue, but giving them that direct connection to the body that represents their interests, their financial concerns, be it taxes, be it their water system or sewer. You are that direct connection to things that directly affect them. So you're in control of making that message. And in terms of my personal experience being a member of the LGBTQ+ plus community. Jordy, you'd asked me earlier, you know, what are the barriers that you face in that? And I said to you that those are barriers that I face every day. They are going to be there, and you know, and I'm well aware of that. And but when I speak to voters door to door, I come at them with a common ground of humanity. And no matter who it is, you know, they're not going to strip away my humanity. And it's just making that connection to people on the local level. It doesn't matter who you love, you know, you drive home the issues that affect us all. And but anyway, sorry, I kind of meandered off that, but yeah.
All good. Thank you for sharing. Ty, did you want to come back on?
No, I did have a question. Just I want to see how people would react. They had a petition signing at an event, and does anyone else, like, I'm running for school board, a school board director who is also a Democrat, who has never met me. I've only spoken out at school board meetings over the last several years in support of programs for children, because I'm an advocate for children. She withheld, and basically when people asked to sign my petition, she purposely misled them to believe it wasn't there. Isn't that committing a crime? Isn't that voter suppression? And this is a current board member who shouldn't have been at the event to begin with, because you have a divested interest in who gets elected. So I personally had a problem with that. I actually posted last night because it came up again. I took it down just because I don't want the group that was sponsoring the event, which was with good intentions. It was the food drives / petition signing. But to be honest with you, I'm still not happy because she did this to me and another candidate. There has to be some accountability, because I don't care about win, lose, or draw. Number one, do things honorably. But at the same time, I'm also a firm believer, and part of my upbringing and also my profession, that you should be held accountable for your actions. Well, does anybody have any ideas?
Yeah, Mr. Holmes, can I just step in here with a story that happened in my county? Okay.
Intentionally misled. And again, even our former mayor, who I've never met, specifically went up there, and everybody knows him, said, I want to see this gentleman's petition because I saw his video online, I've heard him speak, and I want to sign his petition even though I've never met him. And he was told no. Now, I don't think the former mayor of our city, who has never met me, needs to lie about it, but I'm just trying to figure out what is the best way, because this is unacceptable. Some people are saying let it go. It's bigger than let it go. It really is to me, just because the attempt at voter suppression, and as I told her, I said, is this another attempt at systemic racism? And I say this because a week ago, this woman was circling a petition to have a union member fired because of a statement, but yet you were willing to do this. Anybody have any advice on what I should do?
So, you know, one of the things that I've dealt with in upstate New York is, you know, when we're talking about racism and stuff, is people using, you know, the notion of us, you know, we talked about the inexperiencing, that's one thing, but the other thing that happens, Mr. Holmes, is that you do have a lot of people who are unwilling to kind of like take a space as an ally, right? And so this seems like a situation where, you know, it does seem like this is an incident of racism, and you know, you don't have to make it or break it moment for people, but this is a situation where you actually can find out which people are going to be able to kind of take your side, right? If you want to publicize it, right? And I think that, you know, there would be community outrage if you were able to kind of show that this is something that is leading to the disenfranchisement of voters, period, right?
Yes.
And, you know, tacking on the fact that you're talking on just on that alone, right? at a time and age when we're having to deal with voter disenfranchisement from the former administration and stuff, I think that that's like a really good way to kind of tackle it. And so I think that may be your step forward. And if you build a coalition of allies who are willing to kind of maybe talk about this from a different perspective, that would also be helpful. Thank you, Giancarlo, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Sure, guys, have a great night. And please, my information is in the chat. If you guys need help or any advice, I'll definitely be a Jiminy Cricket in whatever way I can. So thank you guys so much. Paolo, thank you again, brother. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Take care.
Ty, just real quick, I just want to make sure I understand. You were at an event and she was telling people that your petition was not valid or something?
No, actually, none of the candidates were allowed to be at the event. So no candidates were allowed to be at the event. And actually, she's a member of the Democratic Women's Organization, but she had not volunteered to be there, so they didn't expect it. She showed up, and at the morning when she showed up, they were like, okay. So then she initially, and this is what the person that is in charge of that, she picked up the clipboard and saw the clipboard and said, I'm not signing this. And I said to that person, why didn't you at that moment say goodbye? Because that's a conflict of interest if she has that mentality. Number one, I'm a Democrat, she's a Democrat, and it's a Democratic event. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to get more Democrats on ballots into positions. But she took that position and then not one, and this is the thing, I wasn't there, so I have no idea. I don't know the former mayor of our city, but through multiple people, they started contacting me saying, why didn't you drop your petition off?
Right.
And I said, what are you talking about? I have a confirmation from the Democratic chair that she had it 2 days before and that I'm all good to go. And they're like, yeah, well, I specifically asked for yours. Several people, I asked for yours specifically because I wanted my name to be on it because a lot of people are taking this. If you're elected, you will be the first black man. It's a big deal to people. Okay, I just want to be someone that makes change. Okay, whatever gets people to vote for me, that's their individual. That's whatever gets them and motivates them, that's on them. But so she was telling people that not that it wasn't even available, it wasn't there. So that's how the conversation started. I started getting text messages about an hour into the event, and I'm not going to call the person running the event.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I don't want to. The only thing I hold against the person that was holding the event, I said, you should be able to recognize you're in a position of authority, a conflict of interest. She should have gone. She should have left. And she should have just said, you should have made her leave when she made that statement. Because obviously you have a divested interest. You are a current board member, and you are trying to pick and choose and manipulate who will be and who will not. Maybe because some people consider me abrasive. I don't know. Again, the NAACP.
Sorry, did you say honest?
Yes, that too. And also, I've spoken out several times, and now that the NAACP is actually chartered, there are some people that do not like that, and I am the chairman/president. So I'm sure, people a little weary. But like I said, this person specifically, and again, I wouldn't have made a big deal if it had been 1 or 2. We have double-digit number of people who confirmed that they went up there specifically asking for my name because they wanted to sign this petition. They were like, we have a person that we believe in, person of color that we know is going to have a hard time getting a fair shake in the city. And I tell them, and they said they wanted to say it. But again, this person said, I've spoken to the chairperson, I've spoken to several people, and everyone's like, you should just, our newspaper where I live contacted me this morning. They wanted to do an interview because they got wind of it. And I don't want to hurt the organization. I don't want to hurt our party and the Democratic Women's Organization, but it was wrong. And for going forward, I don't want this person or anyone else to do that because you're manipulating who gets on a ballot is what you're attempting. It's no different if she would have tore the petition up. You can't do that. It's technically illegal. It's a form of voter suppression, I thought.
This sounds like a Karen, sir. And I think you have every right to be angry, and I think you have every right to publicize it. And I think that I'd like to be able to kind of, because the thing that I really hate, and I think is like a thing that's kind of sad, is that like men of color in the power dynamic of being able to run for office in these civic organizations are always called aggressive, are always called angry, and we're not.
Yep.
And we're not. And so
Passionate.
if you need someone to support you and you need like a national organization, you know, I know you're the NAACP chair and stuff, I'd love to work with you on making a statement happen, because I don't think it's fair that, you know, I notice, I'm not trying to like be weird, but I noticed that power dynamic here a little bit. And when the older African American gentleman had you know, tried to ask us a question and stuff, and someone jumped in, you know, to talk about how he needed to do more, and you know, that's great. We should, yeah, we should.
That was me. If you're calling me, I don't mind, but just wanted.
No, not you, Jordy. No. I forget her.
Morgan. That's Morgan. Yeah.
No, but this is. Can we stop recording? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.